everything just fell apart. Oh gosh, here, let me fix it. Okay. Will it work? Hold on, y'all. I don't want to start it all over again. Sorry, y'all. I'm a one-man team here in this little office in the war room. So I guess that gave enough time. Um, 1,100 days, and we're not giving up. We'll go through, climb every mountain, go down every stream. I mean, go down every valley, follow every stream. What is that saying? Stay up late every night. Make sure everything is maintained and working properly. And nothing can get me in a bad mood tonight. Nothing can. 1,001 days since Richard vanished from the barracks. And here I'm saying, I'm looking up, I'm looking forward, I'm feeling that we are, as long as we're moving forward, as long as we are inch by inch finding Richard, and that the end goal is finding Richard, then you can't get me down, right? And we have had all kinds of arrows shot at us. We've had asymmetric warfare tactics. I kid you not. I'm not kidding. I'm not using those words just offhandedly. I'm very serious. The intelligence agency and our military have 6 ways to Sunday to get to you, right? And if you are not lockstepping into what they want or bowing to that hat, right? The way they want you to, then they'll use what we have entrusted them with: asymmetric warfare tactics, military operations, to sabotage you, to try to get you to go away, to stop. And, at the beginning of this, it was very clear that something went very, very wrong because the Army didn't notify us. They didn't notify us, and they did not shout from the rooftops that Richard was missing. And, you could say, oh, well, we never look for an AWOL soldier. That's what First Sergeant Jay Paulin said to me, or to his NCO social media group. He said they don't really look for AWOL soldiers, right? But this wasn't just any time. This was when Fort Hood was under great scrutiny, and even worse than that, you had leaders losing their jobs because AWOL soldiers their remains were being found dead, dead, brutally murdered. And here Richard was missing, and there was nothing. There was no urgency. There was no want to call. This is a very modern military, we think. And, it's not like, oh, here's this paperwork and we know that they don't follow standard operating procedures. We know that in every area it's a failed program, it's undisciplined, and they don't follow their standard operating procedures. So here you have, let's say, a first sergeant or a captain, first lieutenant, and they have this missing soldier, and the paperwork, they call a number, and that's not the right number, right? They would look at, okay, wait a minute here, let's look up Halliday real quick, and find the number and do it. Or go to the Red Cross, or go to the military police, or, this is a missing soldier, and he's not just any missing soldier. He's a distinguished honor graduate from basic training in AIT. And they did not mention that to any of the media, to Stars and Stripes especially. No, they smeared him when they're trying to look for him. And we have a lot of friends that read Stars and Stripes, and they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe the article about Richard when the PAO finally said that they would put Richard back on the rolls, because they threw Richard off the rolls, which threw us out. We thought nowhere to go, and we did, and people didn't let us know, or it's our own fault. We should have known what to do, but when you're in that kind of chaotic situation in so many different ways, because 2020 was a very chaotic year, and with the COVID closing down so many offices, making things not run well, it made things more difficult. But we're in 2023 now, and these are different times, and it's been 1,000 days, and we're waiting for DA Bill Hicks to respond to our letters. He seems to have a lot of time on his hand. What do I mean by that? Well, and I have some really, really good news to share with you, because Team Find Richard Halliday has just gotten much bigger. But look at this. This is really important. These are billboards here. And what is happening? The FBI is launching a billboard campaign. I think 10 regular billboards and then 10 digital billboards. They're going to pay for. It costs a lot of money for billboards to stop threats to our schools. So it's clearly before we respond, yeah. So it's clearly has a little political twist to it from my point of view, because why 10 digital billboards when not one for 1,000 days for the missing soldier Richard Halliday? I think we know why, right? So what does this say? This says they have a lot of money. They have the money. They have the mechanism They have the will to do campaigns. Why not for Richard? Where is the FBI? Um, Jeff Downey. Jeff Downey is in charge of the FBI there in El Paso, and I believe, if I saw it right, that DA Bill Hicks was right there with him, which is also concerning for me. And I'll tell you why that's concerning. Because they should remain as separate as they can for checks and balance purposes. And absolutely, what we have discovered in our investigation. Now, everybody needs to know that it was not our choice to investigate the disappearance and the murder of our son. Okay, that was not our choice. When we went to the meetings, we saw. So okay, so they didn't contact us. We never got the 2-week letter until until I don't even call it the 2-week letter. We never got the 2-week letter. Okay, we got a letter, but it was 2 months later, 2.5 months later. We never got a 2-week letter, and we never got a 48-hour notice. We did not. We didn't get anything, and so when Rob finally called, and they said, "Well, it's too late now. It's too late now. He's a deserter. Your son's a deserter," and they kicked us out. They kicked Richard out by taking him off the rolls. That means he was no longer in the military. They just kicked him out. And that was hell, y'all. Absolute hell. But God had a different plan. And Hannah's Instagram had many, many shares, many, many thousands of shares. And the PAO came and said, okay, we're going to bring you back on the rolls, the CID. And the PAO is the public affairs officer, came back and said, "Are you ready to hear about your son?" And that's when the smear campaign began. That was the launch of the smear campaign. In my mind, it was the total launch of the smear campaign. People argue that the launch of the smear campaign was way before Richard ever went missing, because he was a whistleblower. And he was doxxed as a whistleblower, and so he was targeted, and that's when the bullying and the hazing and the retaliation absolutely went full force, severely, continuously, until it escalated to murder, and not only murder, but the collusion to, and this is what we're finding out. This is the leaks coming in, and it absolutely makes sense that they colluded to make sure there wasn't a Vanessa Guillen. Let's not do a Vanessa. You know what that means? We cannot find Richard Halliday's remains. No one can know where Richard Halliday's remains is. He has to be considered AWOL, you see, a deserter. That's a smear. That is an absolute smear. And so now we're finding out, when you're given autopsy numbers, 3 of them, and one strange one, so really 4. One, but I only listed 3. I put the 4th one up first of all, so they're out there. And you have to ask these questions, and we write letters, and the DA ignores us. The 44 4-star generals and admirals that have betrayed us, that are working for foreign and domestic enemies, they have ignored us. The FBI, Jeff Downey, he he can't even put one billboard up for 1,000 days for Richard Halliday if they thought he was um, missing, right? Because he's no longer designated as deserter. He's designated as the first CONUS DES-1 missing soldier in U.S. Army history under the new Vanessa Guillen absent soldier flowchart. What does that mean? CONUS means Continental USA. That he went missing at home. And what does DES-1 mean? Duty, status, whereabouts unknown. They don't know where he's at. And he's on duty. He's on duty. And that's also kind of strange. Because we have, reports that he was in uniform when he was brutally murdered and cut asunder, dismembered, divided, and placed in 4 different locations so that we wouldn't have another Vanessa Guillen. Meaning, find the body. Because if you find the body, you find the remains, then there's repercussions. And they didn't want the repercussions, see? They didn't want the leadership repercussions. They had it out for Richard, but not really the Army. And they didn't want, people in high places, connections in high places, to lose some of their chains. They, when they pull on chains, pull on strings, and this is what I really want to get to, is that so many people in this case are home in El Paso, Texas. Okay, they are home in El Paso, Texas. And it's kind of like this DA being so close to the FBI. When you're at home in El Paso, Texas, and you have all the connections and everything, it's much easier to get involved in the corruption, to get involved in the criminal syndicates, to grow those criminal syndicates, to be up to no good. It's much easier to forget that you're really there to defend the Constitution. And see, Richard was not at home in El Paso, Texas. That was not his home. That was not his home. He didn't go to school there. He didn't have a previous job there. He didn't have family there. He didn't have all the border connections, all the Juarez connections, he didn't have that. But so many in this case do. And so he was coming in to people that had long established business plans or connections, and they were up to no good. That's why he was a whistleblower. And he told us. That's why I can say it so freely, because he told me over and over on the phone they were up to no good. Okay, they're very, very bad. That's what he said. They're very, very bad. Mom, they're very, very bad. And he didn't tell me what. Okay, but very, very bad. That tells me a lot right there. And I don't think he told me because, and I've said this before, because I told him a lot of things that were happening in the military that was very, very bad. And that's why I didn't want him to join the military. And we tried to persuade him not to. I tried everything I could. Rob tried everything he could. Rob was like, listen to your mother. We'll give you $10,000 to start with to get you into that criminal investigative education, because he wanted to go into being a detective, a criminal investigator. And so he got to his Delta 143, and he landed right into lots of crime that he could investigate, and he whistleblowed. He was a whistleblower, and he tried to go to his leadership, but he said he told me his leadership was so bad. His NCOs were so bad. His officers were so bad because, he had college, so he was going to try to go green to gold, become an officer. This was all at basic training when he was distinguished honor graduate. And they were so bad. They were so bad when he got there that he was like, I don't even want to stay in the military. He was kind of telling me, you were right, Mom. But don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. I'm just gonna keep my head down, stay E4, and I'll get out. Do my years and get out. And I think that he couldn't keep his head low because it involved children. The crimes were involving children. And we know that now with the Lonnie Hart's notarized complaint on the 22nd of July, 2020, that even had, all kinds. These are all leaks, but we have the numbers. We have the CID file number. We have the FBI file number. And it involves an 8-year-old, sexual assault on an 8-year-old. It involves just things that are not good, y'all. And a long history of crimes against children, crimes against nature. And I think that and you see Richard's file, that's how Richard's file was doxed, was by Tavita Nusa to Leilani Hart, to many other people, including Hema Sochil. I believe that Hema Sochil at the beginning, that's why she had all this information, right? She had all this information, and I sat there in the meeting at the Stage Task Force 5 Richard Halliday with Lieutenant General Donna Martin out of uniform in like picnic gear, and sitting like an Indian in her chair in the middle of the room. And yeah, and I was telling them, because she said, I want to hear about Richard. And I said, well, who is this Hema Sochil? Right? And why is First Sergeant Jay Pollan acting the way he is? So I did not know at that time that Hema Sochil was the wife of the other First Sergeant, Michael Ruggiero. So here I am going, look at how they're acting. This is not normal. If what Jay Pollan was saying was true at the beginning of all of this, nothing makes sense. But everything makes sense now, because now we know, and I'd like to get something official to say, yes, this did happen, or no, this didn't happen. But they don't share any information with us. The information that they've shared in the past about, that man that goes into the Dollar General, he's just some crazy guy. That was a lie. They wouldn't tell us about Hema Sochil. So they haven't shared anything with us that was truth, that we could depend on. And that's why we're asking for something written down with all these leaks that we have been given them, all these inquiries that we have given them. And you have to understand, they asked us to do it. They asked us to bring them leads. They asked us to investigate our son. And it's turned out to be an investigation of our son's murder. They've asked us to do that. And so they essentially have targeted us and put us in danger without and kept by whoever's pulling these chains, these strings, or whatever. The DA there, Bill Hicks, who says he's for victims' rights, to give us a call. Now, why haven't we gotten some safety nets, right? Why was Richard's whistleblowing blown? His safety net, his coverage, his security, his protection. And now we have this IRS agent that, you know, wants whistleblower protection. And I'm like, watch out, watch out. You need to have about 1,000 layers of whistleblower protection, because they dox you, and they'll put a target on you. And this is a CID special agent doxing Richard. It's not just somebody, you know. So it's really important to understand what's going on in in our agencies, because they've forgotten that they're supposed to serve us, right? They've gotten too fat and happy in their jobs, and too corrupt, and they have forgotten that they're supposed to defend the Constitution of the United States, which is the land and the people. And that means they're supposed to serve us. And, you know, it's become politically weaponized, our agencies. And so now we have stop threats. You know, and 10 billboards, 10 digital billboards, 10 regular billboards. I think it's like 20 billboards in all. Or is it just, let's see, they'll run maybe 10 billboards, the digital ones. Yeah. And they will run until June 11th. Not one for one day for Richard Halliday, which is a huge threat. Because and I have another one here. I have another thing I want to talk about. Which is another thing that brings morale down, that our volunteer service members know that our agencies don't give a flip about them, don't have their six, do not really say thank you for your service. They don't really say thank you for your service. They're saying, if you die, if you're missing, well, hell with you. That's what they're saying. It's a kick in the teeth to every service member. And it's a kick in the teeth. It's a stomp on the grave of every lost veteran. The sacrifices of so many volunteer sons and daughters that were needlessly sacrificed because our leadership doesn't care and doesn't follow SOP. And I have that on Find Richard Halliday. You know, and I even corrected it a few times. And then when I posted it, I had to make some changes. Which, here I am. Let's see if it's on there. Maybe I passed it up. There it is. So it says, in addition to hiding the murder and the remains of our son from us, there are reports of irregularities and misconduct such as, and the reason why I put this on here is because something had to lead to Richard's murder. Okay? There's always consequences, and those consequences, there has to be a reason, right? For all these deaths, suicides, rapes, sexual harassment. And so we're finding that out. And I have been looking into that and paying attention to that, along with many other Team Find Richard Halliday um, people that are keeping their eyes open to what is leading to so much injury and even death to our volunteer sons and daughters. Okay? Which is a threat to our national security. It is a threat. And so citizens, Team Find Richard Halliday, are trying to find what is threatening our national security. They're doing the work of the 44 four-star generals that have betrayed us, that are serving foreign and domestic enemies. They're doing the work of the DA, Bill Hicks, of the Attorney General, Jaime Esparza. They're doing the work of the FBI, Jeff Downey. They're doing the work of these special agents or these attorneys that are supposed to look for violent crime or border crime, such as Greg McDonald. And there's so many more. And and I want to say thank you to everybody that sent letters to the IG, Michael Horowitz. I think that made a huge impact. Thank you so much. If you haven't, it's not too late. Please send a letter to the IG, Michael Horowitz, to inspect the investigation of Richard Halliday, the missing soldier, that now we absolutely believe that he was murdered and that he was cut asunder, that he was dismembered, that he was divided and placed. His remains were placed in different locations, so that there wouldn't be another Vanessa Guillen. R.I.P. Vanessa Guillen. This is no disrespect for you. This is for you. This is in memory of you, because we cannot let this continue to happen. Okay? And so what is happening? Well, we have found there's violations of military regulations. And now, things that I put up earlier, there was so many reports of misuse of the funds and everything. We know that they have failed 5 audits in a row. Okay? And trillions of dollars. Okay? But I took that off. So this is stuff that I think is in Richard, that has been totally revealed at Fort Bliss in Richard's case. And that's violations of military regulations. Uncovered evidence of soldiers violating military regulations. Okay? That has been throughout this whole 1,000 days. Misuse of government funds. Absolutely. What do you call that staged Find Richard Halliday? That was a staged task force, a misuse of government funds. Absolutely fraud, waste, and abuse. And I would say that all the asymmetric warfare tactics, the military operations, even the K9, because that was staged, I think that is also misappropriation of government funds. That's the waste of what we have given the military. We've entrusted our money to the military for them to use it wisely, and they're using it to cover themselves up. Okay? Insubordination, uncovered evidence of soldiers disobeying orders or failing to follow the chain of command. 100%, and it's not Richard. Absolutely, 100%, and it's not Richard. Harassment and discrimination. Discovered evidence of soldiers harassing or discriminating against other soldiers based on their race, gender, or sexual orientation. Hazing. Uncovered evidence of soldiers engaging in hazing rituals, which can be dangerous and often violate military regulations. Poor leadership. Found evidence of poor leadership within the unit, such as favoritism, lack of accountability, or failure to properly train and mentor soldiers, actions unbecoming of a U.S. Army soldier. 100%. Evidence of drug use. may have found drug paraphernalia or drug residue in the barracks during his investigation, indicating that some members of the unit were using drugs. May have found evidence of theft or missing equipment. During his investigation, the missing equipment could have included weapons or other valuable military equipment. Potential abuse of power. May have found evidence that certain members of the unit were abusing their power or position of authority within the barracks. This could have included mistreating or intimidating other soldiers or using their power to commit illegal activities. Now, these are all statements that we have gotten over these 1,000 days. We have witness statements of all of these things over and over again over 1,000 days. The barracks were a mess. The barracks were a mess, and so therefore even the Secretary of the Army is saying it. But I want to address what the Secretary of the Army, Christine Warmouth, says. I'm not a big fan of hers. Who is she? I'm not a big fan because she flipped off a sitting senator and she's his subordinate. And she has no, if she does that, then she has no respect for the Constitution. She's not defending the Constitution. She is acting unfit in her position, unbecoming, unfit, and illegal in her position. And she should be arrested for what she did to Senator Cruz. I think so. 100%. Negligence in following procedures. We have that from Brigadier David Stewart. Discovered that some members of the unit were not following military procedures such as proper weapon storage and maintenance. And then low morale. We were told by Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz that the morale was so low they had to bring in girls during the COVID lockdown because the morale was low. So let's bring in young girls. And we've heard, there was leaks that they paid them even, okay, to bring in young girls during the COVID lockdown. Whose bright idea was that? It's so insane, right? Because you have weapons not being stored right, and they're all over the barracks. You have drugs all over the barracks. You have sexual harassment. You have sexual assault. You have insubordination. You have people acting, not becoming a U.S. Army soldier. You have no discipline. You have no good mentors, no good leadership, and you're bringing in young girls. You're just asking for trouble, which makes the military look bad, because if something happens to these girls, and I'm sure it did, then that gets out and makes the military look bad, which it absolutely looks bad. And that is a national security threat. And so one of the things that we were told that Richard was complaining about was sexual assault. Now, we don't know if that was sexual assault of children. He went to the Child Protective Services to make the complaint. So, but he was also complaining about unit members not doing their duty. Okay? And him being assaulted or being bullied and whatever. But we need to get all that clarified. And I absolutely, as an American, as a citizen, as the wife of a veteran, as the mother of a veteran, as the daughter of a veteran, I have the right to ask these questions. I have the right to probe to see if what we're told that we have the best Department of Defense in the world and they're defending our Constitution, if that's true. And it's not true. And it caused, I believe, it caused the murder and the mess of so many of our volunteer sons and daughters. I think it's systemic. I know it's systemic from Fort Stewart to Fort Bragg, Camp Pendleton. We have Marines engaged in weapon trafficking, smuggling, being hitmen, human trafficking. We have that in the Army as well. We have the Air Force illegally sharing people's private files. We have that in the Army with Richard. And as a whistleblower, that was a double crime, because not only are they sharing his personal files, but they are unveiling a whistleblower and breaching his protection and putting a target on his back. So, absolutely. Oh, I got rid of that, and I didn't mean to do that. Secretary of the Army. I think there it is. Yeah, that came up real quick. Okay, so here she is. Um, I was listening to her the other day speak in Congress, and it was so bad. It was so insane, because she was protecting the right for men to shower with women in the barracks in military installations. So would she protect the right for this? Would she protect the right for this? You know? I mean, what she's protecting is so insane that I have to ask that question. And she was like, the people aren't concerned about, you know, um, what goes on in the locker room, or what goes on in the shower. That, you're a woman, and all of a sudden you have a naked man standing in front of you, and that he's feels threatened by the women. This is what they were kind of talking about, that there's these reports, but it's like, what? Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of the Army. If you're a man and you can't shower with the men, get out of the Army. If you're a woman and you can't shower with the women, get out of the Army. Get out of the military. We don't need that insanity. But they are fostering the sex cults, these doggy sex cults, this weird, this something that, how can I say this? This is our future. This is our future being threatened. This has nothing to do with me and my beliefs. This has everything to do with our national security and our future being threatened because of the division, the catering. What in oh, I'll even show it to you. Let me see if I can bring it up. See if I got it. Oh, here he is. I got it right away. Oh.
Mr. Broccoli,
Yeah.
You were arrested and you were a piece of broccoli.
Yes.
Do you identify as broccoli, or?
I am Mr. Broccoli, yes. Yes, that's right, please.
Do you have another name or not?
No, Mr. Broccoli is
That's
me.
it.
Yeah.
You don't go about your daily business as a piece of broccoli.
I've always been a piece of broccoli.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So do you have a job?
I just grow. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I grow.
It's sprouted up everywhere.
And Mr. Broccoli.
Okay. That is what I'm talking about. This this Mr. Broccoli can't go into the military. Okay? It is very, very clear. And this Secretary of the Army doesn't get it. She's like, oh, well, the people are more worried about sexual assault. And the representative was like, hello? If you're putting this man in with the women and the women in with the men, don't you think that creates an atmosphere or an environment that will expand and add to the numbers of sexual assault and sexual harassment? Hello? And so now she says, Army Secretary says she wouldn't want her daughters living in some Army barracks. Okay, now that is totally calculated. Totally calculated. Why? Why? Because they want to put $1 billion into some major development. It's always about the major development. That's what El Paso is all about too. Who's the main guy? Who's the main person that pulls all the strings? That pulls all the chains? That has all the money? That wants to do these major developments? They just put Castner Range on on top of the list for major development. And there might be evidence there for Richard's murder, and we're not allowed to go there now. It's just like what happened at kilometer 29. They brought in these big heavy trucks and stuff like that and started moving the land before we even had an after action search from our after action report that clearly we had people there at kilometer 29 that said that in October, the end of September, October, they couldn't exactly remember. Well, now we know with the dates that in October of 2020, they did remove remains out of that area. And they intimidated the witness. But now we as time goes by, we get more and more information. So let's look at that. But here she is admitting. And, her reasons that she wouldn't want her daughters to live there is because of mold and mildew. No, the suicide rate is way up. The drug overdose rate is way up. It's worse than a mold and mildew problem. That's what I'm saying. Violence is way up. It's worse than a mold and mildew problem. Okay? And then they've had 5 audits with trillions of dollars missing. If they were so concerned about the housing of our service members, they should have done it a long time ago. And, I don't give them any excuses at all because my son-in-law is South Korean. And my dad has had connections, RIP dad, over in South Korea for many, many years because he was at the DMZ years and years ago when he was like 19 years old. He was at the DMZ. So he has all this history over in South Korea. And in just like 20, 25 years, that country developed so fast, so modern. Now, with trillions of dollars missing in failed audits with the DOD, and the money is there. What have they been waiting for? It's all about these contracts. It's all about these major developments. And, this puts me in danger for saying the obvious, the absolute obvious. I'm convinced that it's about these contracts, these multi-million, billion-dollar contracts, because I was in Germany for so long, and I would see this perfectly wonderful military hospital. You could update it a little, but it was perfectly good for the population that was there. Allison had been born there. And here they were contracting out for $1 billion for a new military hospital. $1 billion. $1 billion? That's not 100 million. That's not 200 million. That's not 500 million. That's not 700 million. Add another 300 million, and then who knows if they contracted out for $1 billion, if it would stop there. And they don't have the resources to even put a billboard up for Richard. They don't have the resources, or they don't have the mechanisms to contact family and loved ones right away when their soldiers are unaccounted for or their whereabouts are unknown. They don't have proper training to know how to respectfully engage with a family that was thrown out, that their son was taken off the rolls, and 1,000 days later we're finding autopsy reports, and they won't even send us a letter right away because they know that we want letters. They know that we want something in writing because they've lied to us, that they have broken our trust. They know that they've broken our trust because, my goodness, they didn't even tell us, oh, he's just some guy walking into the Dollar General. No, he was the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, who said that the FBI was looking for the remains of our son in Juarez and found him. And that was in October of 2020. Right when the autopsy has the date on it of October 2020. And partial remains. Well, fragmented remains. And we can't get a letter after they've breached our trust, after they've lied to us, after they've thrown us out. I mean, failed in so many ways. Failed the SOPs in the barracks. Failed us as Americans. Put us under so much vile and vulgar abuse, and they can't even send us a letter and say, ma'am, those are Richard's autopsy reports, and we have his remains, and we will give you his remains. And I know it's not nice, and I know it's not pretty seen to give back fragmented remains to a family. I know it. I know they don't want to do it. They gave goo back to Caleb Smithers' mother. You want to know what they gave back to Vanessa Guillen's family? What they handed back to Austin Hawk's family? They got partial remains, his head, from Enrique Roman Martinez, and then they put him in cold case. Which brings me to the good news. It brings me to the good news. And I know that is so, they are so cold-blooded to let us go through this just because they don't want to put anything on paper. They don't want to admit that they've been hiding the remains of our son since the beginning that they put us through all of this just to cover their own butts? And if it's not true, why are they so silent? Why aren't they protecting themselves now? Why aren't they having a press conference and saying, absolutely not, Richard is still CONUS Dust One missing soldier? Which leads me to the good news. These are, if you want to go to Telegram, we're on Telegram, and there's all this information on these autopsies and the dates. Okay, the dates. And I have another bullet list of all the dates, and I'll put that up. October 19th, now 2020, human remains were found near kilometer 29 in Juarez. Now, the Dollar General man, or the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd AGCOM, which is Richard's command, and it's G3. Well, if you're military, you understand that G3 is operations. That happened on October 26th. So just a week after this. And it is curious because he went in that Dollar General pretty often because his place of work was right next door. And so he goes in and he's looking at the flyer, and he's like, you can take that down now because we found him. We meaning I'm with the FBI. And I've asked anybody to come on to give us a call, 941 677-0060. I've asked people to come on, tell their story. He could tell his story. He could backpedal if he wants, but they don't come on. And Jay Paulin, he was trying to get us not to go to El Paso in his charming way at the beginning when we got there. You think that he even met with us? It all makes sense now. It makes sense. How many people does it take to pull this off? It's like a JFK, right? It's like you have to have so many agencies, so many people being pulled by a chain to shut up. The clap. It's kind of like they pulled everyone quiet. And what does it take to pull this off? And who are they really protecting? What are they really protecting? Are they protecting the development there, the major development that's going to go on there? Well, let me tell you, if the military is this bad, no one's going to want to move there. Maybe they will. I don't know. But I knew, when I lived in El Paso, we could freely go over to Juarez. We wanted to go over to Juarez all the time. We couldn't wait to go over there. Now everyone's like, oh, it's a dangerous city in the world. It's the most dangerous city in the world. Why? We have given so much money to our officials, and do not tell me that if we did our job in the United States, that it would not affect the city of Juarez and make the city of Juarez much safer. But because there's so much criminal syndicates, crimes of smuggling and trafficking and everything on that border, it makes both cities especially Juarez, unsafe. And because of that, it makes the barracks unsafe because they're just so sloppy and they don't care and they've lost their way and they don't want to defend the Constitution. They don't have esprit de corps. They don't have esprit de corps. And so the SOPs don't get followed. Stands for Standard Operating Procedures. The barracks Standard Operating Procedures were absolutely not followed. And there was a big mess. And Richard was a whistleblower. He didn't like what he saw. And that led to his retaliation. It led to his murder. And because it's systemic, they couldn't have another Vanessa Guillen because they didn't want to lose their jobs. And they covered it up, which led to the smearing of Richard, which led to the vile and vulgar abuse of his family, which led to asymmetric warfare tactics used against family and friends, which led to a military operations used against, weaponized against the family, which is going to lead to the truth, you see, because you cannot cover up the sun and a lie with one finger. You can't do it, right? The sun is going to shine. The truth is going to come out. And so it has been leaking out now. And we had everybody participate in the 1,000 Days, 1,000 Letters campaign that we had, that we have. You can still send letters to AG Michael Horowitz. And now we have some very good news, and that is that the CID Quantico, they want to meet with us. They're going to launch an investigation on Richard. I guess they're taking him out of cold case. I don't know. I'll tell you more after the meeting. But that's not the good news because we don't trust them, you see? We can't trust them to do their job. They have breached their trust. And to just be happy and say, oh, wow, yay, would be insane. To trust your abuser, to trust those that are putting you in harm's way. No, we weren't real happy about that. But what is good is that now the officer of the court squarely in our court and will be attending the meeting with us, with the IG. So we will have an ally there that knows law, that knows how the system works. And I think that is an answer to prayers. And we're very, very grateful. Very grateful. So I think that will, because they have their SJAs, you see, they have their lawyers. They have more than one. And you walk in there and you're just abandoned by this system. But this meeting is going to be different because we're not abandoned. We're not abandoned to the system. And that is really, really good news. So when I know even more, I'll tell you more. And now I'll take your questions. Okay, messages. So I have a friend that says, she's worried that we're not getting accurate information. We know we're not getting accurate information. That's why we have probably way over 1,000. I know we have hundreds of inquiries in. Okay, we have put in letter after letter after letter with lists and lists of inquiries. Who's this? What's this? What's this? You think that they will send us answers back? Do you think that, look, Senator Ted Cruz asked super good questions in his letter. He got flipped off. He's a sitting senator. He got flipped off by a subordinate 23 ranks lower than he is. We have been asked, we putting good letters in, and not as good as Senator Cruz. That was really a good letter. But we've been putting in a lot of good letters with a lot of good questions. Do you think that we've gotten answers? Written answers that we can trust? No. So all this information is not accurate. And I'll tell you what is really not accurate is everything that the CID has told us. The smears on Richard, who Dollar General Man is just some crazy guy. He's just some guy following you on Facebook. That was a lie. They couldn't even tell us the truth when it came to the canine and the canine dog. And then they wanted to, everything has been inaccurate that comes out of the mouth of the CID. His passport's not there. It was there. He's an atheist. He just happens to buy a Christmas tree with Christmas decorations. And many, many more things that I can't even share with you that is such a lie, that were inaccurate. And then they would twist things and make it inaccurate. So I'm trusting our leaks way more than what the CID told us. Way more. And where has the AUSAs been? Where have the attorneys been? Where has the DA been? Where has the IG been? And hello, Veronica Escobar, who has the right to subpoena, who has the right to call a hearing to straighten all of this out. Where are you? She has totally been negligent and derelict in her oversight of Fort Bliss, which causes so much injury to so many soldiers. Because those barracks, she could straighten all that out. She could straighten all that out. That's why they roll out the red carpet for her on Fort Bliss, because she has that kind of power. She has oversight of Fort Bliss. She could call out the Department of Justice. She could call out the Army, the military. She could call them out. I'm going to post all her powers again because I think it's huge. But thank you, my friend, for being worried about the inaccuracy, because there is a lot. And another thing, too, is the smears have not just been on Richard. The lies have not been told just about Richard. It's our family. It's our friends. It's about this case. It's about our country. They've lied about our country. Okay, let's see. Some questions. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Anicia. Thank you, Patty. So, isn't it great news? I know it's really great news that the officer of the court, he will be with us in the meeting that we have with Quantico. And we think that by the letter, and I can read that letter to you. I can definitely read that letter to you. See? See if I can find it. Okay, it says, good afternoon, and I hope this email finds you well, and I would like to see if you will be available for a telephone call on Tuesday, the 25th of April, 2023, to discuss the investigation concerning your son. Okay, that doesn't sound like cold case. He's not a cold case. On the call, we would like to introduce the leadership within the directorate and provide an introduction to a person who will be your direct point of contact and case agent for the investigation going forward. Further, if you have any questions concerning the investigation, we can discuss them at that time. This is Division Chief of Death and Violent Crimes. Okay? This is Division Chief of Death and Violent Crimes. What does that say? That Richard is dead from a violent crime. That's what that says to me. And remember, at the beginning of this, they gave us a CAO, a Casualty Assistance Officer. And that was also interesting because, they have to follow certain legal things. And even Jay Polly goes, why did they get a Casualty Assistance Officer? Okay, that's probably because they found remains. And, yeah. So, we need to get this squared away, and all of our inquiries, all of our questions, if half of them, if a third of them would be answered, we would have more trust. But we haven't gotten anything. Nothing written down. And they did come back a little bit with the canine, but it was fluff, y'all. It didn't even answer our questions. Okay? So, whenever we get something that answers the questions with the autopsy and the areas here, the remains, human remains. So July 29th, 2020, human remains were found in a shallow grave near the Donna Ana Range in New Mexico. It's called Red Rio Range, and I put up a map to that, and were later identified as those of Private First Class Richard Halliday, and they were partial remains. We have leaks that they were in uniform. That means he was on duty, right? So now, I don't know if Red Rio Range is right. I don't know if this information is right. And we have to put it all out there, because when we write inquiries, we get ignored. And we're calling for the communion of saints. We're calling for those to write media, write the IG, write the DA, write the military, so that they will be driven to do the right thing. That's what we're doing. Those are Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe's words. That they have to be driven to do the right thing. Okay? They're not going to do it on their own. And there's plenty of witnesses, thousands and thousands of witnesses that would back us up on that statement. On August 3rd, more human remains were found. Also in Clint, Texas, human remains were found. And September 9th, which is, I'm getting different numbers for that one. These are the undisclosed location in West Texas. Oh, that's the Clint, Texas one. No, yeah, this is the undisclosed one, and they need to answer these. And then human remains found October 19th in Juarez. So, where is their official record with timeline and everything that we can, that's something that is very legally and official that we can count on? That's what we want. So, okay, everyone. And, another thing that has really been a nightmare for me is we know for a fact that Richard was a whistleblower. We know that. We absolutely know that. And never once in any of the meetings did they say to us before we knew that, oh, by the way, your son was a whistleblower and that might have put him in danger. That's very, very important information that they withheld from us. With all the other information. But no, we have to find it out on our own, and we have to find out on our own that they sent a senior leader to the military police guard mount to smear our son unjustly and groundlessly. We have to find out that Hema Sochil is the wife of Richard's first sergeant. We had to find out ourselves with Team Find Richard Halliday that man that said the FBI found the remains of your son and he's dead, so that means they're hiding the remains of our son. Shh, shh. We had to find that out ourselves, that was the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado in the G3. Clearly with that is hard evidence. We have the video. We have the cashier testimony. We have the man himself saying it. We called the State Department there and said, we're the FBI looking for Richard in Juarez, meaning his remains. And the State Department said, yes, they were during that time. So this is why, we keep going and going, because we have such hard evidence, but nobody in that we've entrusted to our law enforcement, to our Department of Justice, to our military to defend the Constitution is willing to do their job. And now we have the FBI in El Paso spending all kinds of money on a billboard, using their power, using their mechanisms, using, our resources that we have given them, entrusted to them, for 10 billboards for this message with the high schools, and not one for the 1,000-day missing soldier. And he doesn't even respond to our letter. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. God bless you. I know it's Friday night. Have a great night. And, it's Saturday early morning now. But it's all right. We'll come on early in the morning. We'll stay up late at night. We'll do the hard work because we know that this is a national security issue, that we have some woman here that doesn't even understand consequences. She doesn't even understand domino effects. She doesn't even understand what it takes to make a fighting force to defend the Constitution. She's playing games, and someone's pulling her strings, just like in El Paso. And anyway, thank you everyone for the time, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing.